House Bill 6, Representative Muscarella, welcome. Thank you for your patience. If you want to go ahead. Mr. Gonzalez, if you would read the instrument in. Mr. Gonzalez. No, he didn't. Do we have Mr. Gonzalez's mic on? We can have Mr. Gonzalez's mic on, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Members, House Bill 6 provides relative to the methods of execution and for confidentiality of records or information relating to the execution of a death sentence.
And Representative Muscarella, I believe that I have an amendment to offer to put your bill in the proper posture. Should we go ahead and offer that amendment?
Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, if you'd read the amendment in.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Members, this amendment's at 71. It's online and in your folders. It's a set of 2 amendments, and it does the following. So amendment number 1 goes on page 2. On line 5, that the proposed law is being rewritten as follows. At the discretion of the Secretary of Department of Public Safety and Corrections, and with no preference to the method of execution, every sentence to death shall be by one of the following methods that is listed below. In addition, amendment number 2, on page 2, starting on line 21, it's removing the following language from the bill. This is getting taken out of the bill. It is the policy of the state that intravenous injection of a substance or substances in a lethal quantity into the body shall be the preferred method of execution. And that's what these bills do. These amendments do.
Thank you. I would offer that amendment. Do we have any objections? That amendment is adopted. Representative Muscarella, on your bill.
Madam Chair and members, I present to you House Bill 6. The bill does 3 things. It declares that any and all records or information containing to the purchase, providing, and manufacturing of any drugs related to the death penalty by the strictly confidential and not subject to public disclosure. Secondly, it would make disclosure by a person subject to a felony offense as well as subject to civil penalties. And thirdly, the methods of execution shall be 3. They shall be lethal injection, nitrogen hypoxia, and electrocution. This bill will bring healthy debate, as it should. What is not debatable is that the death penalty is legal in Louisiana. What is not debatable is that 57 people sit on death row, each one found guilty and sentenced to death. Behind every victim are families who sit behind me, who consistently sit through numerous legal proceedings. Each hearing resurfaces the horrific story of their loss and their loved one. Yet when the appeal delays are ruled on and the time to honor the commitment has come, nothing happens. Members, we made an oath to uphold the laws of our state. Today, you can honor that oath and remove the hurdles so that justice can be served. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Representative Muscarella. Do we have any questions of Representative Muscarella? Representative Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My apology, I was out. I was looking for the full set of amendments. I don't have a copy of it in my...
I'm sorry. 1 second, Representative Knox.
Okay, I have it now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Representative Muscarella. How are you today?
Doing well, Representative Knox.
Great, thank you. One question real fast. You mentioned that there are 57
That's my
individuals?
appreciation. Yes, that's what the information that I was given.
How many are you aware have been exonerated?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I think it's about 10 or 12, if I'm not mistaken. So if 10 or 12 people were exonerated, I think since 2008, those 10 or 12 people would be dead under your legislation right now. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. Representative Knox, there's a very lengthy appellate process. I can tell you that from my experience, most death row inmates are given some of the best representation money can buy. We spend a lot of money providing them legal representation. The process is long, and there are many layers involved in that. So I would disagree with that.
Well, for the 10 that were exonerated, money didn't buy it. It was done freely, as I
But no,
understand it.
I would argue that it worked. The process worked. They were exonerated.
Thank you. And I want to make clear that on this issue of the death penalty, I made it clear last year that it's one of which I'm evolving on. And we spent a lot of time, myself and some of my colleagues who are on this committee, and I spent a lot of time talking about my evolution on this issue with some of the people who are sitting behind you. And I want to state for the record that I am still evolving on this issue. I'm still somewhat on the fence. Nevertheless, I submitted an amendment that addressed the confidentiality portion of your bill. And I want to just drill down on that real quickly. And have we approved these? I wasn't in. I'm sorry. Oh, I would like to offer the amendment. It is amendment number 4.
Mr. Gonzalez, if you'd read the amendment. Representative Knox has offered an amendment to House Bill 6, if you'd read it into the record.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As discussed, members, this is Amendment Set 66 to House Bill 6. It's being passed out currently, and it's available in public online. And it does the following. Amendments 1 through 3 make technical changes. And Amendment 4 states the following as a new subsection J. Department of Public Safety and Corrections shall make counseling services available for any person involved in the execution of a death sentence in this state. That's what this amendment does.
Do we have any objection to the amendment? I object. Roll call vote, please. Do we discuss it? Go ahead and discuss it. Rep Cox, if you want to go ahead and discuss your amendment.
I had a question mainly. Any person involved, is that any state officer or anybody involved in the application of the execution? That's correct.
Wait, can I understand that amendment again? The amendment is not for the person being executed?
Thank you. I'm on now. No, just for clarity, it's not for the person that we're talking about killing. It's for the people who are involved in killing the individual.
Thank you for that clarification. So
Yes.
I'm going to withdraw my objection and ask the members if they have any objection to this amendment. Rep Fontenot?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, certainly, I don't necessarily disagree with my colleague. I disagree that it should be in the statute. I think the Department of Corrections could come here and tell us that over the years that those people have administered the lethal injections of inmates, that they receive counseling, that's available. I think it's unnecessary, and it could be problem-solving going forward or problem-causing going forward to put that in the statute. That burden lies with the Department of Corrections to promulgate those rules for those people who are approved to carry out these sentences. So for that reason, I would object for it being into the statute.
Thank you, Representative Fontenot. Representative Knox?
Madam Chair, just for further clarification, the amendment is to make available counseling for individuals that we are asking to go and kill people. And let me drill down a little bit on that. As a former Marine, machine gunner, combat veteran, I was trained to kill people. I spent 3 months in boot camp. I spent an additional 5 weeks in Marine combat training, and I spent an additional 2 to 3 months in the School of Infantry training to kill someone. The people that we're asking to go kill someone on death row have not been trained. They have not been properly educated on how to really kill someone. And so therefore, as a veteran, someone who has seen death, who has seen what death looks like in somebody's eyes, and for me, as someone who still suffers with the PTSD to this day, I think it's only fair that if we're going to ask someone to go and kill someone, to make available to them, as the VA does for me and all the veterans who are told to go kill someone, to allow them to have that option.
Representative Knox, I appreciate your passion, but
Thank
we need
you.
to keep it down a little bit.
Well, I'm triggered. My PTSD is
I
triggered, but I'll try to keep it down.
appreciate it,
I
but
appreciate
yeah,
it,
we
Madam Chair.
can
May I finish, please?
Sure.
And I'll keep it down and try to control my PTSD on this issue, because that's why we need counseling. That's why we need counseling. That's why I'm in counseling right now. Because when you kill people, it's hard to get over it. When you kill people and you haven't been properly trained in that, that has a lasting impact on an individual and their family. My wife, if she was here, she'd tell you herself. It has an impact. So just for clarity, one last time, as it relates to my amendment, the purpose is, and it has nothing to do with anything else, the only purpose is to make available the option for individuals that we're asking to go kill somebody, that they have counseling, that it be there for them. That's all this amendment has.
Thank you. We have an amendment offered by Representative Horton.
May I ask Representative Muscolero, do you support this amendment?
I have no objection to it.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Horton. We have an amendment by Representative Knox. We have an objection by Representative Fontenot. Let's call a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Johnson.
If that's on or not.
It's on now.
Okay, Representative Knox, you're referring to the employees of the state or the parish or whoever's involved. And to the extent that they're not already covered by whatever benefits that the state as an employee would be entitled to, you're just wanting to make sure they're entitled to whatever counseling they might need for having conducted that. To the extent that they're not already provided. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further questions by members? Again, we have an amendment offered by Representative Knox. We have an objection by Representative Fontenot. If we could call Representative Bacala.
Substitute motion to adopt the amendment.
Okay. So now we have on the table substitute motion. So a vote yes would be for the amendment on the substitute motion. A vote no would be against the amendment. If So we're good with the. Okay, if we could do a roll call vote on the amendment, a vote yes is for the amendment that Representative Knox has offered. A vote no is against the amendment. If we could do a roll call vote, please.
Representative Adams? Yes. Yes. Representative Bacala? Yes. Representative Boyer? Yes. Representative Cox? Yes. Representative Fontenot? No. Representative Horton? Yes. Speaker Pro Tem Johnson? Yes. Representative Knox? Yes. Representative LaFleur? Yes. Representative Moore? Yes. Representative Ventrella? Representative Walters? Yes. Representative Wiley? Yes. Representative Villio?
Yes.
Yes. 12 yeas, 1 nay.
On your bill, Representative Muscarella.
Well, I would like to address Representative Knox just one thing. I don't see this bill as being an issue, a debate about the death penalty. That's already in law. And, I think a couple of years ago, somebody brought a bill to overturn it and abolish it. It's here. So my issue is the commitment to the families. What are we doing here? So I just wanted that to be on the record. Death penalty is legal here and in 26 other states. So.
Thank you, Representative Muscarella. Do we have any questions of Representative Muscarella? Representative Knox and then Representative Johnson.
Yeah, I only want to respond in that I understand that, Representative, and I'm not here to debate that. We did that last session. I just wanted to provide a response to that particular section as it relates to confidentiality for the individuals that we will be sending or asking to commit the execution. That's my only point.
I'll be voting for it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Johnson.
Chairman Muscarella, I think you've said this, but I just want to make sure. Your bill does not change nor advocate for or against the death penalty.
Absolutely not.
Whether we vote for or against your bill, the death penalty is still the law of the land of Louisiana.
That's been the most difficult part when I talk to people, is that they think this is about that issue. This is not. The legality of death penalty is in the books.
And so whatever personal challenges we have with the death penalty, this bill is not about that argument.
Absolutely not.
You, me, everyone here, most of the public officials took an oath, did we not?
Yes.
I mean, talking about morality, we took an oath to God to uphold the laws of the land.
Yes.
This is the law of the land.
Yes, it is. This and 26 other states.
But it hadn't been able to be completed because why?
We can't get basically the drugs to perform the execution,
Tell me why that is.
because the drug companies don't want to provide it because they're scared of being picketed and exposed, and it's just not feasible for them. They don't want to get in the fight.
And that's why you have the confidentiality provision of your bill.
Right. And this is not novel. This is done in other states. I just used other states to come up with the law.
And it is to protect those persons that we want to counsel with after this is done. It protects them from fulfilling their oath, fulfilling their job duties.
It protects everybody involved in the process.
And although you can't help but recognize all of our feelings about life,
It's a tough issue.
but there's also the life of those victims, is there not?
You know, we saved the death penalty for the worst of the worst. And so some of these stories that I've heard during my time running this bill, it just breaks your heart. So, and you know, every day that we wait, the folks behind me are waiting and they want their justice. And so I think they deserve it.
I can't imagine losing a son or a daughter or a family member to the hatefulness of someone that would take their life. And then to look to the state and the officials who take the oath to execute the laws of the state, but we get no relief. All your bill is doing is making sure that these mothers and fathers, and brothers and sisters, and children of those who have been victims can rely on our law, to be completed as we have taken an oath to make it so.
Yes,
And that's all it is.
that's all it does.
And protect the people who are charged to execute it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Johnson. Do we have, or Speaker Pro Tem Johnson, do we have any other members having questions of Chairman Muscarella? Thank you, Chairman. Tony Clayton, District Attorney. Howard Keith Vincent, father of Louisiana State Trooper Stephen Vincent, and Mr. Sinkfield from the Attorney General's office. If y'all want to take the table in support and testify. Mr. Clayton, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Tony Clayton. I'm the district attorney from the 18th JDC. I'll go directly to you, Representative Knox, and you talked about how you were a soldier. And if the United States had sent you over to Ukraine to face the Russians to go protect society and gave you a gun but didn't give you any bullets, it wouldn't be fair to you, would it? And so I say that with all due respect that it's the law of the land, just as Representative Johnson just said. And I hope to see it pass unanimously because it's the law. And let me tell you something. When you hear from the family behind me, Wayne Grisada and the rest of them, how their daughter was murdered, Representative Ventrella, then we're only asking you to put some teeth into this law. And whether you for it or against it, it's of no moment. It's the law of the land. And we are a nation of laws and not of men. And so I respectfully ask each and every one of you to give the people, law enforcement, to mete out justice. I'll tell you, Representative Knox, it is the most grueling thing in the world to prosecute a death penalty case. You go through state court, you go to the appellate courts, you go to the Supreme Court of Louisiana, then they file a habeas corpus, and every federal judge will just light in on me and Singfield and everyone else. And so throughout the process, and I hear a bunch of you guys talk about, well, what about exonerations? Representative Muscarella was spot on. That's what the process is for. If there are exonerations, good, the systems work, because you go through a plethora of judges, a plethora of them. So if somebody's exonerated, the system worked. But don't put us out there with no bullets and these guns to execute the law of the land. And it's our law, and that's just my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I hope, Representative Wiley, each and every one of you support the law of this land. It's like speeding. You may not like 55 miles an hour, but it's the law of the land. Any questions?
Thank you. Do we have any members with questions for Representative Knox?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in response to Mr. Clayton, since he directed to me, I would have an issue going to combat without bullets. I've been there, and in a sad kind of way, some of us do go without bullets and appropriate equipment and gear. But nevertheless, I'm definitely proud of my military service in the Marine Corps. Not a soldier, a Marine. Let's be clear about that. You and I have had this debate very...
I hope you come in my way. I hope you've totally evolved now. I'm waiting to see.
I can't say I'm totally evolved yet. I can't say, but as it been noted, that issue that you're raising is really not before us today. And as my colleague, Speaker Pro Tem Johnson eloquently put it, that is the law of the land. And the last time we had this conversation, you and I told you in no uncertain terms that if it was a loved one of mine, I wouldn't need the state to execute him. I would do it myself, if you recall that. So I don't need you to come in here to act as if you're being performative to tell me something that I already know. Let's be clear about that. So the issue before us, as it has been clearly described, I have no opposition to. My amendment has to do with the confidentiality part of Mr. Representative Muscarella's bill. And my amendment passed. So with that, I'm good. Thank you.
I'll wait to see the final vote.
Thank you. Any other questions of District Attorney Clayton? Thank you, Mr. Clayton. Mr. Vincent?
Yes, he's my brother. Just wanted to clarify that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm here to talk about a specific case that's dear to my heart. I lost my brother. We're a family of law enforcement, and myself and my two brothers are troopers. I've been a cop for almost 30 years. I've seen a lot of stuff, and by no means am I advocating for an innocent man to be sentenced to death. I would never want to see justice served in that capacity. However, this specific case of this deviant, evil man and the horrific things he did to my little brother, who was out on a traffic stop trying to help him and blew his face off. I have nothing for him. He killed somebody else prior to that and has no remorse, absolutely none. He's worried about himself. So you have to take into account there are extremely evil, deviant people. And these people only worry about themselves. And they feed on media. They love all the hype they get and how famous they can be. But let me tell you something. Our law, and I served my country. I've served my public servants almost all my life. And we do swear and take an oath as a cop, as a soldier. And I'm firmly about that. And every one of you, as this district attorney said, took an oath in office. That is the law of the land. and we need to enforce the law of the land and to put in drug companies that are worried about people talking bad about their company and have no idea what these victims. I made a new friend here yesterday, and we've been dealing with this going on 15 years, and when he told me 30 years, now you're talking about somebody that's went through all their appellate system. There's no question. This guy is on video. They got a confession. They got DNA. It exceeds the standard of reasonable doubt. Far exceeds it. There's no question this man committed that homicide. That's what that law is for. Victims should not be sitting here listening to a bunch of bureaucracy and having to go back and court. We had to go to sentencing twice, because of some technicalities for this man. So I'm here asking you to do your job, just like I have as a public servant for years, and enforce the law of the land. That's all I got to say, and I would appreciate it if you do so. Thank you, and respect you.
Mr. Vincent, I want to say thank you so much for your service, for your little brother's service, giving us your little brother to this state, and I appreciate you, and I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you, and thank you all for listening to me.
Do we have any members that have any questions of Mr. Vincent? Thank you. Mr. Sink, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I echo your sentiment, and I want to say thank you for your service, and I want to be clear, and some of the new friends you made, if they recall, my position is clear as it relates to these monsters who commit these kind of crimes. I'm on the record and saying I don't care about them. I'm on the record and saying that I would take care of myself if it was my loved one. So I want to be clear, and you should know that you have my full support and compassion for what you're going through, you and everyone else sitting behind you. I want to make that crystal clear if I haven't already.
Thank you, and I do commend you on the counseling part. That I feel that's needed as well.
Thank you, Representative Knox. Anybody else have any questions of Mr. Vincent? Thank you, Mr. Sinkfield.
Yeah, may it please the committee, John Sinkfield, Executive Counsel to Attorney General Liz Murrow. Particularly want to say hello to my friend Representative Knox, who I serve on another committee with. Please don't beat me up today. I just want to address the methods of execution very quickly. I prosecuted a case in 1997, obtained a death penalty that you're going to hear a lot about, I think, in a few minutes. And I've been in federal court, state court, Supreme Court, everywhere in the world ever since 1997, trying to push forward on the execution of this individual. The last time that it came up, I was told that it couldn't be carried out because the drugs weren't available to carry out a lethal injection. So I do want to address the alternative. I think it's very important that this state have alternative means of execution in case that carries on. I've had 3 people actually executed that I prosecuted, 2 that I tried, 1 that I handled post-conviction. One of the executions I didn't attend because I'd been to 32 hearings and I didn't think it would take place. The second one, I was trying another murder case. The third one I did attend, which was a lethal injection. And I remember walking out after that with Burl Kane, who was the warden then, and I commented to him that this was a much, much more peaceful, dignified death than the victim in the case that I had tried. When you go, and I'll go very quickly, when you look into methods of execution, and it is the killing of a human being, state-sanctioned killing of a human being, after conviction of a specific crime and after due process under Louisiana and United States constitutions. When you look at the history, I don't know how far back it goes. Over in France, they used to chop people's heads off. A guy named Dr., and I don't know if I pronounce it right, Guillotine, invented the guillotine, which was meant to be a more humane way. The French used modern guillotines with stainless steel blades and ball bearings up until the 50s. Which was very, and I'm not suggesting we go back to that. After World War II, the United States Army executed many ex-Nazi criminal war prisoners by hanging at Landsberg Prison. There's a YouTube video if you want to watch it. That was considered the most humane way to execute. Then, back in the early part of the last century, Thomas Edison, I believe it was, invented the electric chair, which was supposed to be a more humane method of executing people than hanging people. Then in this very legislature, at a committee room over there years ago, I apologize, and I'll be very quick.
Please.
I sat and listened to that lethal injection was the more humane method, and we adopted that. Now, if you check the Right to Die organization, I believe in Washington
Need
or
to wrap it
Oregon,
up, Mr. Sinkfield.
says that the nitrogen masks are the most humane way. We've adopted two others.
Thank you. Any questions, any members, any questions of Mr. Sinkfield? Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Gazzardo, Wayne Gazzardo, John T. Prock, and Amy McMullen. If y'all want to come to the table, please. Mr. Gazzardo.
Good afternoon. Y'all have seen me here before for 28 years and 3 months to be exact. That's how long it's been. My daughter was murdered on the 19th of November, 1995, while she was begging for her life. We have a recording of her on 911, begging. Had already given him the money. He walked in, told her, "Shut up, bitch." Shot her dead in cold blood. Wasn't bad enough he did that. When her cook heard my daughter get shot, he got scared and ran out of the cooler. Shot him in the back twice. Neither one of these people were armed. They were no threat to him at all. First thing he tells when he gets out of court, when he gets out on the road, I'd have killed them all if my gun wouldn't have jammed. And he would have. So anyway, let me get off of that. For 25, we've been to at least 25, 30, 20, north of 25, and way more than that, appeals. We've been through every appeal here ahead. We went to the Supreme Court. We went to the Supreme Court in New Orleans, and finally we went all the way to the Supreme Court in Washington. After they looked at everything, all the appeals, weighted heavily, they voted 8-1 to execute him. Sent it back. 2 days later, John Bell Edwards put a moratorium on it. I always thought that you separated church from state. He didn't. He never did. And anyway, I won't go there. And you see, what y'all don't understand is why Todd Weston is on death row. He gets to see his mother and father. He gets to talk to them. Me and my wife go to the cemetery to talk to my daughter's grave. And guess what? She doesn't talk back to us. And never will again. And he's walking around Angola, a soldier for the Lord. 2 days later, he's got 2 tattoos on his eye. And y'all know what that means. He's proud of what he did. And we've had our lives are not now and never will ever be the same. I hope none of y'all ever have to go through what we've gone through. We miss her every day. Every day. It never goes away. And we're not looking for revenge. We've had the newspapers and all these people holler revenge. We're not looking for revenge. We want justice. This man has been in there 28 years. Long story short, we're still a family, but we're not a whole family. And
Thank you, Mr.
We miss her dearly every day, as much as we did 28 years ago. It's changed our lives forever, in a bad way and not a good way. And all we're asking y'all to do is give us the justice that my daughter deserves.
Thank you, Mr. Guzzardo, and thank you for your commitment to justice to your precious Stephanie. Do we have any members that have any questions of Mr. Guzzardo? Representative Knox.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't really have a question. I want to express my condolence once again, and thank you again for being here. I recall very vividly your testimony last year, and it frustrates me. It aggravates me. It literally triggers me to watch you and all these other victims have to repeat this story over and over again. And I know it's not easy. And so I just want to express to you, thank you and your wife and all of these victims here for not giving up. As I said last year and as I said today, this is an issue that I'm evolving on. But as I said previously, I'm fully clear on what I would have done in that instance. And you and I have talked briefly about it, and that has not changed. But I want to say to you, with all due respect and all the victims here, I hear you. I want the justice that you deserve and that the victims deserve. I'm clear on that. And I hope you get some peace, however it comes. But I want to make clear, I hear you, I feel your pain, and I so feel it. And it triggers me every time you have to come before us and express it, because I know it can't be easy. And I just want you to know that. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Knox. Vice Chair LaFleur, requesting to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I simply want to thank you again for showing up and fighting for the memory of your daughter. And I want you to know that my commitment to justice for Stephanie is unmoved.
And me and my family want to tell you how much we appreciate you, Representative Fleur. You made our day. That day that you said, can you ask me the question? And I said yes. And you said you went to school with Stephanie, and you knew her very well. You made me and my wife's day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair LaFleur. Anyone else have questions of Mr. Guzzardo? Thank you. Ms. McMullen?
I'm Amy McMullen, and I'm the niece and the granddaughter of Bobby Prock and the niece of Joe Prock. And the one thing I want to say to you is I hope we involve you today. I've heard you say that numerous times, and I hope that we do. So I just want to tell you a little bit about our story, and then my dad's going to speak as well. So the fire that wouldn't go out was the burning body of his murdered younger brother. This is some of his testimony. The brother of the slain Caddo Parish Fire Captain Joe Prock, himself a volunteer firefighter, testified today it's the murder trial. Hold on just one second.
Do we have any?
I felt in Dorsey that when he arrived to fight a fire at his mother's house, south of Greenwood, he went inside to try to put out the fire near the door. The fire was his brother because they had set him on fire. Joe, who had been killed when he walked in the house of the invasion of the robbery of his mother, Joe Prock threw water on the fire with a large dog's water bowl, and he was trying to put the fire out, later to learn that it was his brother. And so I just have one thing to say to each and every one of you. This was a premeditated event. They knew, he said, the other person in this case, Randy Wilson, said, we knew this was going to happen. Miss Prock's house was chosen, and it was chosen because my uncle retired from the fire department and got his drop money from the fire department. My uncle works with my husband. He worked with my husband, and as you all know, the fire department is a brotherhood. They were all hurt, terribly hurt. And had they been able to kill him, find him, they would have, just as you said, you would do that for your family members. So I ask you today to not only, approve these other methods of injection to help us move this death penalty along. This has been going on for 18 years. I want my dad to see this happen. My grandmother is with the Lord, and she wanted to see it happen. I really want my dad to be here when this happens. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate so much about being invited.
Thank you, Ms. McMullen, and I am so sorry for your loss. Do we have any questions for Ms. McMullen? Thank you. Mr. Prock.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
and I do appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak to all of you today. Emotions run high. Emotions are running high right now. Representative Knox over here has had a lot of comments with a lot of what's been said here today. I want to thank you for your military service. I too had several years of service in the Army, though not the Marines. I can't help you there. But we're talking about death of loved ones, people that near and dear to our heart. We're talking about, just like this gentleman here, I did not know his daughter. But what him and his wife have been through should not be happening. Not in this state, not in any state. We've had a lot of discussion about death and dying. My brother that was killed died the day he retired from the fire department as a full-time paid fireman. I've spent 50 plus years as a volunteer fireman. I've seen death in every form imaginable. And it hurts. It hurts me every time I see it, even though I don't know the people that, or the families of these people that died. Excuse me. So it's not something new to me. It wasn't new to me when I saw my brother. It was devastating. Absolutely devastating. What I saw that day and what I went through. And I have tried ever since that day to do everything that I can to try to bring some type of closure to the family. We did not make it for my mother. She died some 5 or 6 years ago. But what is in front of you today for your consideration is an opportunity for this state to do what they have already said they were going to do and have failed to do to this point. Making these other sources of execution available to the people in the state so that the executions can be done in a timely manner. I don't mean right after they've been proven guilty. Let's go through the appeal process. I don't want to see an innocent person killed either. Innocently.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. I am so very sorry for your loss, and thank you for your commitment to justice. Do we have any members who have any questions of Mr. Brock? Thank you. District Attorney Philip Terrell here present to speak in support. Is District Attorney Terrell? Oh, I apologize. Terrell says President will provide information if any questions. Members and audience, it is 3:00. We have numerous cards in opposition. As adopted at the beginning of this committee, there will be an hour limitation, time limitation on the opposition, just like there was an hour limitation on the proponents, though they didn't take an hour. So I want you to be mindful that the number of cards with the 3-minute rule exceeds an hour without questions. So whether or not y'all want to get together on who testifies, but we have the cards in order of receipt, and that would be Katie Hunter Lowry. It appears to be, I believe, a Haydell Ward and Bishop Duca. If y'all want to take the table, are you here?
No.
And before we take testimony with the opposition, I want to remind you of two things. What is not in the legislation is the repeal of the death penalty, or whether or not we have a death penalty. That is the law of this state, and what is not before this committee is the public records exception. That is a debate for a committee, I believe, tomorrow in House and Governmental. So I would ask the opponents to keep their testimony to the bill that's before us. Ms. Hunter Lowry.
I actually need a second. Will you go ahead and start?
Bishop?
I'm not sure how to address my concerns, but I will simply say that, you can tell me if I'm out of order here. I would be, along with the bishops of the Louisiana, would not want to increase, or would not want to. You got me off guard because I'm trying to decide how to say this.
Go. I'm not going to stop you from your testimony, Bishop. It's
Okay,
3
all right.
minutes.
Well, obviously, first of all, I should say this, the testimony is striking that I just heard. I have 40 years of priest, 30 years of priest, 15 years of bishop. I have sat with many people in those situations. Not as many, 2 or 3 similar ones, and many times of death and tragedy. And I know the deep pain and hurt. But we as a bishops' conference continue to say that we need to respect in all ways the dignity of a human person. Some of the language we use sometimes is to make someone less than human. And at times, they act that way, it seems. But our actions are not meant to be given to respond at their level, but to respond to the way in which we bring true justice. And justice can be had, in a sense, by protecting us from crimes. And so I'm against enhancing or looking for alternative ways to execute, because I believe that we can, through incarceration, protect our people. One thing let me just say this at the end. When we talk about the mercy of God, some people will always tell me, well, God has justice. Mercy of God always sees in every person, even those who have done heinous crimes, sees the mark of his very image in them. And his justice, well, I don't presume what his justice is. I don't know what that is. And so I think that falls to God to make that decision. And so I would be against providing opportunities for the death penalty to continue. Now, I know that's not the law, but I would voice an opinion against that because I think we're lessened by that process. And so I guess I'll say that for now, because I just feel as though we're continuing a cycle of violence. And at some point, it has to stop, and we start acting in a way that respects human life without demonizing it. But today, you got me flustered because of your anyway. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I know that people struggle with this issue, and I think rightly so. Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Bishop Duca. What I would say is, whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. That was 57 years of my teaching by the Catholic Church. But I appreciate that you and the church, your position on that doctrine has changed. It's just hard for me, having learned that for 57 years. But I appreciate your position, and thank you for your testimony. Do any members have any questions of Bishop Duca? Thank you. Ms. Hunter Lowry, did you want to go?
Yes. My name is Katie Hunter Lowry. I am the coordinator of the Louisiana Survivors for Reform Coalition. And, like has been said, my heart is broken for every family here who has lost a loved one and is still in so much pain. And there are those of us here, myself included, who knows what it is to want justice for experiencing violence. And I also understand wanting the person who hurt you to die. The things that I have wanted to happen to the person who raped me are far more gruesome than anything in Representative Muscarello's bill. But that is not up to me. And I would not wish administering murder or witnessing murder on anybody. I watched a woman die in 2013. She was shot at point blank range on the street, and I watched her die. And the fact that this body is going to put into law a practice that requires preemptively providing counseling is so distressing and disturbing. And we, as survivor advocates and faith leaders who are working tirelessly to end cycles of violence in our state and see peace and see an end to harm, this is a signal to us that this body is not serious about that, that it's willing to perpetuate violence in some of the most gruesome ways and create more survivors of that violence. The employees who will be forced to kill another human did not sign up for this. That is not something that we can ask of people. And these are gruesome methods that we're talking about. This is not humane, no matter what Mr. Singfield says. Filling someone's blood with poison while they writhe is horrible. Suffocating someone to death is horrible. Electrocuting a person until they take their last breath is awful. And I feel like that's really clear. I feel like that is known. And I ask that this committee vote against this bill and not further enshrine horrible violence into a state that has already experienced so much of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Ms. Hunter Lowry? Mr. Ward?
Good afternoon. My name is Hardell Ward. I am the Director of Community Engagement at Promise of Justice, but I don't come to you today to speak on behalf of PJI. I come to you as Hardell Ward, a member of Cornerstone Methodist Baptist Church in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm here also with the words of Father Tommy Dillon, who's an Episcopal priest. In this season of Lent, a sacred time for Christians as we approach Good Friday and the commemoration of Jesus' crucifixion, it is imperative that we reflect on the values that underpin our faith. We remember the injustice of capital punishment inflicted upon Jesus, and we are called to question whether we perpetuate such acts in our society. I sit here today not only as a representative of the Episcopal Church, Mr. Father Dillon, but also in solidarity with numerous major religious groups that officially oppose the death penalty. This includes the American Baptist Church, the Catholic Church, the Evangelist Lutheran Church, Judaism, Buddhism, Presbyterian Church, the United Methodist Church, and the United Church of Christ. Our shared commitment to the sanctity of life and the pursuit of justice compels us to speak against House Bill 6. As people of faith, we are called to embody the values of compassion, mercy, and forgiveness. I urge each of you, regardless of religious affiliation, to consider the moral implication of supporting a bill that seeks to restart executions in our state. Let us choose a path that aligns with the principles of justice, love, transcending the harsh and irreversible nature of capital punishment. I agree that we separate church and state in Louisiana and in our country because we do not put one church or one faith above others. But we do not separate our own faiths when we carry out our acts. The people who we will ask to carry out this cannot put aside their own faith. I cannot put aside my own faith for my own job to come here to my own personal feeling on the death penalty. Because my faith, I cannot set my faith aside, which is why I speak for you today. I hadn't planned on speaking with you here today. I was asked to share these lessons, but I said, let's hear and consider what we do. And I hear this lesson that we are in the month of Lent. We simply celebrate Mardi Gras, and we come towards the greatest day in our faith, the promise of Christ. To sit here as someone who has lived in Louisiana his entire life, to know that we will begin this, it's terrifying. Because what is our next step? We are here for a special session on crime, but I believe if we're going to tackle crime, we have to show that forgiveness is necessary, rehabilitation is necessary. We have to show compassion to compel the hearts and minds of people to follow the path. That is what I believe, and that is what I'm here today. And I'll ask you all to remember, don't set your faith aside when you make your decision. Do your jobs, but remember, you are still who you are, and we have to be who we are tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Does any member have any questions of Mr. Ward? Thank you. Father Tommy Dillon, Fisher Schaefer, and Chico Yancey.
Whose birthday? Your birthday? Oh, happy birthday, Sue.
While we're waiting for the witnesses to come to the table, I'd like to take the personal privilege to wish Senator Sam Jenkins a very happy birthday. Do we have Chico Yancey, Fisher Schaefer, and Father Tommy Dillon? All right, Sarah Gazzazo, Catherine Knight, and Maureen Kelly. Do you want to come up to the table?
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Gonzalo, and I'm here to read a statement from a victim who could not make it down here today with such short notice. Good morning, members of the House Committee on the Administration of Criminal Justice. My name is Brett Malone. I am the eldest son of Mary Ann Shaver Malone, who was murdered in December of 2000 in Plain Dealing, just north of the Shreveport-Bossier area. The young man who was convicted of her murder has now been on the Louisiana's death row for almost 22 years. And after these 23 years since her death, my family and I have been processing it over and over and over, because that's what we must do in order to heal. Personally, and based on research on this very issue, I know that killing the young man responsible for my mother's death will not bring me or my family any closure, contrary to what we were told. Rather, killing him will only bring into our lives, into his family's life, and into our community, more pain, more suffering, more anger, more harm. It will not bring us any relief, much less repair the harm that has been done. We have since chosen to err on the side of mercy rather than death. I've recently requested the new governor to honor our family's wishes and choose life over death in our situation. We want our family's legacy to be one of mercy, not vengeance. And so my prayer for you today is to choose life over death, even with the lives of people who have done very bad things. Voting the pass of HB 6 will tell the people of Louisiana that you do not really want our society to benefit from things like restorative or reparative justice, or alternatives that lead to true healing and genuine closure. The methods of killing people in our state outlined in HB 6 are barbaric. These are methods we've used in the past.
I need you to wrap it up, Ms. Guzado.
More civilized and merciful legislative bodies in the U.S. have since rejected these killing methods as being inhumane, all being forms of cruel and unusual punishment.
Thank you, Ms. Guzado. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. Ms. Knight.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Knight. I'm here in opposition of this bill and to talk to you about the method of nitrogen hypoxia. As part of my preparation for today, I read up on the events of Kenneth Smith's execution in Alabama and spoke at length to a medico-legal expert qualified as an anesthesiologist and intensive care specialist. What follows in my testimony is pulled from our discussion. The process of executing someone via nitrogen hypoxia is essentially suffocating someone to death. This process would be akin to putting a plastic bag over someone's head. The human body is hardwired to know that if you aren't breathing, it should do whatever it can to try to rectify that. This is a very distressing state to be in, and the distress comes on much faster than the loss of consciousness. However, even when consciousness is lost, some awareness is still maintained. From the witnesses at the execution of Kenneth Smith, we know that he appeared to lose consciousness within around 7 minutes of the nitrogen gas inhalation beginning. 7 minutes. Do you know how long that is? That's more than double the time you're giving me to testify today. During this period of consciousness, Mr. Smith would have known he was suffocating. This would have been the first stage of the experience. Once he had lost consciousness, he would have continued to have some sort of awareness or experience, even if his brain was no longer engaging in analytical thought processes. This is because the parts of the brain that control feeling and experience require less oxygen than the parts that control analytical thought, and as such, the thinking part of the brain will be starved and cut off more quickly than the awareness and feeling part. Until the brainstem is destroyed, which is one of the last parts of the brain to die following a period of hypoxia, and when death is pronounced, there remains a potential for feeling and experiencing. This means it is entirely possible that Mr. Smith suffered for a full 28 minutes before he was pronounced dead. In addition to the effects of hypoxia on the brain, blood supply will start to be cut off to other organs, causing, for example, chest pain and abdominal pain in light of the organs affected in those areas. We also know that lung aspiration was found on Mr. Smith's autopsy report. Fluid aspiration would have occurred as a result of him dry heaving and vomiting the contents of his stomach and gastric juices. This would have been inhaled into his lungs prior to his death, causing inflammation and a further experience of pain. Dignitas, the Swiss organisation who provide assistance in dying, do not allow nitrogen hypoxia as a form of killing, nor does any state that allows medical assistance in dying allow this form of killing, because as agreed in the scientific literature for the past decade, it is seen as experimental and inhumane. Our conversation ended with this anaesthetist saying, if you're looking for an instantaneous way of killing someone, this is not it. The fastest way would be via the guillotine, and if I was to be executed, this would be the process that I would take any day over nitrogen suffocation. It is an awful way to die.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Knight? Thank you. Ms. Kelly. I'm sorry, Representative Walters.
Thank you, Chair. I think my button's not working. Can you repeat the name of the substance that you say is the quickest form of way?
The guillotine.
The guillotine.
Thank you.
It's just to clarify, it's not a substance. It's chopping someone's head off.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Walters. Does anybody else have any questions of Ms. Knight? Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Good afternoon. I have come before some of you before, and some of you are new. I welcome you all and promise you that we will be here until this practice that is state sanctioned is no longer part of this state's laws. I know that you take an oath to follow the laws of the state, but some of the laws of the state require you to question whether or not they are good laws. The Catholic Church, as Representative Villio has mentioned, has decided to take a firm stance that no longer should it be allowed that people take people's lives because they have taken people's lives. I ask you, why do we kill people who kill people to show that killing people is wrong? I really wanted to say something to some of the victims who are here today because I saw them last year. And I do understand. I was a criminal defense lawyer. I've not experienced in my own personal life the anguish that you would have losing a child. But I think we all think about it if we're parents, what we would do, how we would like to react.
again, I ask you, having to come 25 times to testify because we have this law that is what we're here about, should we expand the methods of execution? Should we make it really gruesome and bring back the electric chair and let's see if we can't suffocate them? I was here last year, and when the bill didn't come out of committee, someone who shall remain nameless said, well, we'll see you next year because Jeff is going to kill them all. Is that what you are here for? Is to make sure that that happens? Don't be a puppet. Use your brain. Know that this is wrong. Know that execution is wrong. And I know you don't like it. I know you don't want to hear it. But I'm going to say it as long as I can. And I see the faces, and I see the hardened hearts, and I see the closed minds. But expanding the methods of execution is not the answer either. I ask you, please, not to pass this. You can't get a bill out to the floor to get rid of the death penalty, but you're going to bring to the floor expanding methods of execution. No. Say no. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. God willing, I will continue to be here on the opposite side of you to
That's why
argue
you're the
for
chair.
justice. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Kelly? Gary Clements, Bruce Riley, Caroline Tillman. Mr. Clements, welcome again.
Thank you. Members of the committee, I'm here to give you a tiny bit of a history lesson just as a counterpoint to some of the other testimony. In 1990, Senate Bill 243 was introduced by Senator Don Kelly of Natchitoches, which was a bill to end the use of the electric chair. And to paraphrase Senator Kennedy, to move into the 20th century. The Senate vote was 29-3. The House bill was 86-3. 24 years later, you're trying to go backwards. And I'll just give you a moment of notice, and that is this. There was a constitutional challenge against the use of the electric chair that was ongoing in 1990 and 1991 in the case of Robert Sawyer, who was subsequently executed by lethal injection in 1993. But that bill, that challenge in court, in federal court, stopped because it was held to be moot because of Senator Kelly's bill. So I'm just saying that taking the electric chair, which has been sitting in mothballs at the Louisiana State Penitentiary Museum outside the front gates since then, and unavailable, and you can go and look at it yourselves and see, and putting all the wires, the handmade wiring, and all the things together to make that happen again, to really make an electric chair available to carry out an execution is going to take some work, and it will be a constitutional challenge. So keep those things in mind. They're not just things that you can trip back to. Moving on to the issue of secrecy. And I might just add that on electrocution, the issue is, that there's cruel and unusual punishment. Some people said, well, it doesn't seem like anybody's, crying out or moving or doing anything. That's because that much voltage of electricity paralyzes the human body. So a person cannot express themselves. The secrecy.
Mr. Clements, the public records exception is not before this committee. I'm not going to limit you on your 3 minutes, but that is for debate before the House and Governmental Committee
Okay,
tomorrow.
I'm not. That's fine.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know that's not for this committee.
The secrecy
today.
bill, there was a secrecy bill language brought about in 2014 in this very committee. And the chair of this committee, at that time Representative Lopinto, carried it through until the last minute of the last day of the legislature in 2014 and wisely chose to withdraw it. Keep that in mind. If you want to know why he did that, you're probably going to need to ask Sheriff Lopinto why. But there's a good reason why these kinds of things should not be put into effect.
Thank you, Mr. Clements. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Clements? Thank you. Mr. Bruce Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Bruce Riley, and I don't really know how to say this, so I'm just going to try to say it. 32 years ago, I was intoxicated, and I woke up to somebody sexually assaulting me. I didn't have a lot of consciousness to think through the situation. I definitely didn't know what the laws were at the time, and I didn't even think, and I lashed out. And this man, understandably, I think, fought back. And I fought back. And he fought back. Eventually, I left him dead there. And when I did gather my wits about me days later, I began a spiritual journey of what now? And had to deal with, to this day, where my soul is going to be. Are things right? Am I okay? Are the people around me okay? What should I do with my life? What would I want my killer to do if they killed me? Regardless of the reasoning. And I've had people sort of make excuses for me and say, well, it's understandable or whatever the case may be. That doesn't help me sleep at night. The only person that's able to sort of, bring that right with me in a way that I can move on with my life and continue and actually show up and share this experience with you is with me and my higher power. And when I see a bill where the proposal is to have people kill people and to subject them to the whether it's right or wrong question for themselves, where they can go and pray on it, whether their soul is going to be all right. I felt the need to speak up, and I want you to think about that person who you're going to ask to do the killing. And I'm going to ask whether or not you're willing to volunteer to be that person. And the person who levels the sentence, as they say in one movie, should swing the sword. Whether the governor should be the one to do the execution. Because the governor alone has the power to pardon the person. And so perhaps that person should be the one who has that obligation to wrestle with their soul and whether they think they're going to be all right. Because I don't think you can just push that off on somebody else. If you guys are going to pass that, I would ask that you start raising your hands and say, I'll tangle with that. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, none of you. It's not fun. It's not easy. And every day for 32 years, I wake up and deal with that. And I wouldn't want anyone, not even my worst enemy, to have to deal with that. Thank you.
Electronics may be starting to work. Representative Wiley, are you requesting to speak? I'm going to pay. Okay. Any other member have any questions of Mr. Riley? Thank you. Caroline Tillman.
Hello, Madam Chairman and committee members. I'm here to read part of the statement made by Attorney Robert Grass to the Kansas legislature last week. Kansas is considering adding nitrogen hypoxia as a method of execution, like you are. Mr. Grass witnessed the execution of Kenneth Smith in Alabama a few weeks ago by nitrogen suffocation. I spoke to him. He wasn't able to be here today, but he wanted his statement heard. He said, "Thank you for the opportunity to submit this statement for the consideration of this bill, which would, among other things, amend the Kansas statute to authorize carrying out a sentence of death in this state by hypoxia administered in such a way to cause death in a swift and humane manner. As far as I know, Mr. Smith is the only person anywhere to be executed by nitrogen hypoxia. As such, his experience may be useful in determining whether that mode of carrying out a death sentence will cause death in a swift and humane manner. Based on my observations, I do not think it did in Mr. Smith's case. At a minimum, Mr. Smith did not appear to be unconscious in seconds and dead in minutes, as Alabama predicted. I'm jumping ahead because of the time limitations. When the warden left the execution chamber, the Alabama Department of Corrections presumably began to supply nitrogen into the mask covering Mr. Smith's face, and he appeared to be having convulsions or seizures. His eyes rolled up, his legs moved violently numerous times, his head thrust forward and back to the gurney several times. He clenched his fists and his arms and body strained against the gurney restraints. I wasn't permitted to bring in a watch into the witness room, so I can't be precise as to the passage of time, but I can say that Mr. Smith writhed for minutes, not seconds. After he stopped writhing, he continued to breathe. For at least 5 or more minutes, he appeared to gasp for air. While this was happening, the corrections officer stationed to the left of Mr. Smith stepped towards him and leaned over his face. After a few seconds, the corrections officer returned to his position and waited. The state has an obligation to carry out death sentences consistent with the prohibitions in the United States and Kansas constitutions against cruel and unusual punishments. Even aside from its constitutional obligations, when the state takes human life, it should do so in a swift and humane manner to preserve the dignity of the condemned and spare the witnesses, like myself, and including the condemned person's family and loved ones, from a gruesome spectacle. If, as the Attorney General said, Mr. Execution's execution was a textbook example of an execution by nitrogen hypoxia, that method does not accomplish these goals.
Thank you, Ms. Tillman. Any members have any questions of Ms. Tillman? Thank you. Rebecca Collins, Jennifer Blanchard, and Claire Fitzpatrick. Do we have Rebecca Collins, Jennifer Blanchard, and Claire Fitzpatrick in the room?
I'm here, Jennifer Blanchard.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jennifer, okay. Then we'll go ahead with J. Courtney Wilson.
Well, I'm here. Do you want me to speak?
Yes, ma'am. I want, but in the interest of time, I want all three at the table.
Gotcha.
J. Courtney Wilson and Susan Weischer? Ms. Blanchard?
Okay. My name is Jennifer Blanchard. I'm a concerned citizen, scientist, and educator, and I would like to thank all of the representatives for hearing us today, and good afternoon to all in the room. I'm going to tell you, like I tell my students, to listen, and I go really fast, so don't miss any of this because I use a lot of analogies. On the subject of nitrogen gas asphyxiation, the UN has spoke out, that's the United Nations, in opposition of the use of this method, citing it as a violation of human rights and a form of cruel torture with great room for error in the administration. Imagine when you were a kid in a swimming pool and your sibling or cousin or friend held you underwater. You couldn't breathe. You were 100% cognizant of that. Or maybe you can imagine the extreme fear, pain, and trauma as a man puts his hands around your throat and slowly you feel every breath of oxygen leaving your body. Think about your muscle and other tissues when deprived of oxygen and how painful and debilitating that would be. As of April 20 of 23, 35 people have been exonerated from death row based on DNA evidence. One landmark case, the man was on death row for 9 years before he was released. Hundreds have been set free in other wrongful convictions based on DNA. If you're pro-life, if you're for justice, if you're for what's wrong or what's right and what's wrong, vote no. And for the record, Rosalind Franklin discovered the double helix structure of DNA in 1952. And if you didn't know that, I think that states everything that is evident with the perversion of man in finding and speaking truth. It wasn't until 1986 when the first DNA was admissible in court. And I ask you all, Can you live with the guilt of killing and torturing an innocent person on your conscience for the rest of your life? No. Vote no. If you don't, I hope and pray that God lets you off on the basis of a technicality before you find yourself in that other place that is much like a prison cell on death row. And just because, and we know this from history, just because it's legal doesn't make it right, moral, ethical, or just. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Blanchard. Do any members have any questions of Ms. Blanchard? Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Courtney Wilson. I'm a 78-year-old, semi-retired, beat-up federal practice attorney. First of all, I am compelled to acknowledge the pain of those family members who sit behind me. Fortunately, that's never something I've had to experience in my own life. I will get back to that in a minute. Secondly, I think I speak from the same faith tradition that Madam Chairman speaks from, also Representative Johnson, who's not here. And the first thing I would like to do is ask Representative Knox if his amendment provides counseling for those people who have witnessed the execution. Secondly, there have been reports that the governor is on record as feeling an obligation to the survivors to carry out what has been described as the law of the land. I wonder if the governor has polled every surviving family. At least one family, as we've heard today, has opted out. Maybe others might also do that. Finally, and this gets back to never having to experience the pain of a murder, if I'm gunned down someplace, I have instructed my loved ones to take the death penalty off the table. I do not want someone executed by the state in my name. I urge you to consider the oxymoron of debating a humane way to kill somebody. That just does not make sense to me. Thank you for your time, and frankly, may God bless your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Do any members have any questions for Mr. Wilson? Representative Knox.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wilson, to respond to the question, no, it does not include witnesses. It only includes those who are actually involved in the execution.
Would you consider an amendment to that effect?
Members, this is, it's
I understand.
not
I can't.
appropriate for questions from the witnesses testifying, and I'd ask that we refrain from asking members questions.
Sorry, I'm used to.
No, I don't mean to make an example, and you don't have to apologize. I'm not reprimanding you as much as trying to just keep order. But I appreciate your question. You're certainly welcome to talk to Representative Knox, and there's an entire process, Mr. Wilson. If this bill gets out of committee, it still has to go to the floor. And if it passes off the floor, it would still have to go to Senate committee. So there's plenty of opportunities, and I'd welcome you if Representative Knox is willing for you to talk outside of committee about anything. But just in order to keep the process as it's supposed to be, I'd ask that we refrain from asking members questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No offense taken.
No, thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Wilson? Thank you. Ms. Weischer, is it?
Yes, yes. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and committee members. My name is Sue Weischer, and I am a Policy and Research Fellow at the Jesuit Social Research Institute at Loyola University, New Orleans. JSRI is a collaboration between the Jesuits of the U.S. South and Loyola University. And we work on issues having to do with race, poverty, and migration, and we approach our work through the lens of Catholic social teaching. And I'm going to speak briefly on Catholic social teaching in this bill today. The foundational principle of Catholic social teaching is respect for the dignity and sanctity of every human life. HB 6 violates this foundational principle by expanding methods of execution in our state to even more cruel methods of killing a human being. HB 6 represents a giant step backwards for our state. in regards to us being a pro-life state that respects the dignity and sanctity of every human life, human rights, and human decency. Another foundational principle of Catholic social teaching is the sanctity of the family. It is in the family where children learn first about God, moral virtues, find their place in the world. When a person is murdered, as we have heard today, the effect on the family members is horrible. It's shattering. And I have nothing but sympathy and sadness for the loss that people have experienced here today. They will never again enjoy the love and guidance and support of their family member. The sanctity of the family was gravely harmed. But we've got to realize that when we kill a person on death row, that also shatters the family of that person. They're innocent, and they're going to suffer the same way. I know this because in 1987, I accompanied a family to visit their son on death row. He was from Lafayette. I was living in Lafayette. And on the evening of his execution, I was at their home when the state called the parents to say that we have killed your son. When the family heard the news, they were grief-stricken. The mother and the sisters were screaming. The little sisters and nephews were crying uncontrollably. The family was inconsolable. And since then, they too have had to live with the loss and grief of having a family member killed. And they've also had to live with the shame and the humiliation of having a son, uncle, brother killed by the state. HB 6 will do nothing, will only make it more likely that family members will suffer the grief and loss of having a family member killed. Again, HB 6 is a giant step backwards for our state. Please vote no on HB 6. And if you can, visit the people on death row, look them in the eye, see, are these people that you want to kill by suffocating, by running electricity through their bodies? And at the same time, ask yourself what this sticker says, who would Jesus execute?
Thank you, Ms. Weisher. Does any member have any question of Ms. Weisher? Thank you. Katie Hunter, Lowry, Michael Cahoon, and Ellen Nelhan. Did she? On this bill? Okay.
She already went, so I was going to take her spot. At your pleasure, Madam Chairwoman. I don't want to take extra time.
No, I understand that. Just, Ms. Ray, just in fairness to everyone, because of time limitations, we have an order, but I do think we're going to definitely get to you within the time, if you don't mind. Michael Cahoon, you're Michael Cahoon. Melissa Flornay. Josh Schwartz. You may be coming out. You may be walking up again, Mary. Ashwini Belchami. No, she's coming, but you're next. Mr. Cahoon.
Hello, committee. My name is Michael Cahoon from the Promise of Justice Initiative, and coming here to echo what so many people have said with extending compassion to everybody who testified and with all of you who I know have to make very hard and difficult decisions. And, just want to say I totally agree that with earlier statements, and it is accurate that this is not a death penalty repeal bill, right? That bill happened last year. The Promise of Justice Initiative worked with Representative Green on that bill, and that bill was prospective only. It didn't go back into old cases, and we'll continue advocating for the repeal of the death penalty. But I actually think this bill is very different in its quality and obviously what it's trying to do, and I think it's entirely possible to be pro-death penalty and anti-death penalty like this. And I know we've heard about the nitrogen hypoxia and the electrocution and the experiences of other states and indeed the experience of our own state when it comes to electrocution. and I know there will be a separate hearing on the public records element of this law, but I'll add that there is a relevancy to the criminal law or to the ACJ committee, because this bill adds a criminal penalty to the secrecy element, which is above and beyond what many other states that have pursued this sort of secrecy structure have done. And right now, I think Representative Knox had a very wise amendment about the people who participate in these executions. Those people's secrecy and confidentiality are already protected under state law, under our current law. What isn't is the businesses, the contracts, the production, and the substances. So that's what's being made secret, and that's what's being made secret with criminal penalties, potentially. So, we're going to have, I think, an opportunity to talk more about the public records, but there is going to be, I think, serious issues with pharmacists, compounding pharmacists, people participating in this process, providing a DOC with these substances, who, by nature of federal reporting to the DEA and FDA, would be in violation of this state law. So if they're doing their due diligence, and reporting as they should, because the DEA and the FDA have an interest in controlled substances, who's making them, where they go, are they safe, they will be subject to criminal penalties.
Thank you, Mr. Cahoon. Does any member have questions of Mr. Cahoon? I don't see any. Mr. Schwartz?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Josh Schwartz, and I'm reading a letter from a medical professional who could not be here today. My name is Jonathan Grandin, and I am a certified registered nurse anesthetist practicing in Louisiana. I am unable to make it in person to testify today because of a scheduled shift at the hospital, but hope you will accept my written testimony regarding House Bill 6. I completed my doctorate of nursing practice in nurse anesthesia from Louisiana State University and have been practicing as a CRNA in a large Louisiana hospital system since I graduated. I provide anesthesia to a variety of patients undergoing all types of medical procedures, including neurosurgery, oncology surgeries, and robotic surgeries. The amount and types of drugs needed varies widely from patient to patient, depending on comorbidities, age, sex, ethnicity, and other various factors. I have reviewed the proposed House Bill 6 regarding methods of execution. Based on my education and experience, I am alarmed at the proposed addition of nitrogen hypoxia as a form of execution. Under this proposed procedure, nitrogen would be used to displace 100% of the oxygen in the lungs, resulting in asphyxiation, otherwise known as suffocation. Hypoxia leads to seizures because it decreases the oxygen going to the brain, so the brain shuts down, and then the respiratory system shuts down, and then the cardiac system shuts down. But throughout this process, there is no indication that the nervous system is no longer functioning, and there cannot be a guarantee that at any point in this process it becomes painless for the patient. I.e., just because the patient is unconscious does not mean that they do not experience pain. There are plenty of medical studies showing that unconscious patients do experience pain based on certain enzymes that are released. When we induce anesthesia in our patients, we use heart rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rate to determine adequate depth of anesthesia and pain control. If heart rate and blood pressure and/or respiratory rate are elevated above a baseline, this would be an indication that the patient is experiencing pain, and intervention, such as administration of narcotics, is warranted. It is my understanding that none of this will be monitored, and instead the patient would be tied down and have a mask strapped to their face to suffocate him using nitrogen. As a longstanding member of the Louisiana medical community, I find that there is a moral and ethical dilemma in using nitrogen hypoxia as a form of execution. Nitrogen hypoxia, in fact, previously was used by veterinarians to euthanize animals and was discontinued because of the obvious stress and distress and pain that animals experience during the process. I would urge this committee to seriously reconsider adding this as a form of execution in our state.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Does any member have questions of Mr. Schwartz? No questions. Ms. Valshemi?
Good afternoon. My name is Ashwini Velchami. I will be reading a letter by Dr. Joel Zivit, who was unable to be here today due to the short notice. I'll be reading excerpts because of the time limit. Dear Chair and members of the committee, I am a Georgia licensed physician with specialties in anesthesiology and intensive care medicine and currently practice at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. I have additional training in bioethics and the law. I was a consulting expert and testifying witness in the case of prisoner Kenny Smith, who Alabama executed with nitrogen gas on January 25, 2024. After reviewing House Bill No. 6, I wish to raise my concerns about the proposals and dispel any notion that the methods included come close to implementing quick or relatively painless death. To the contrary, Louisiana would likely find itself a party to the unlawful act of cruel torture. It further puts the Louisiana public at grave risk by neutering the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners, as well as undermining critical oversight by the Pharmacy Board. The bill lists 3 methods of execution. The first method is described as intravenous injection of a substance or substances in a lethal quantity into the body. This language leaves wide open what substance would be used, including something unregulated, untested, or a frank poison. The vagueness of this language is likely intended to address the problems of obtaining known pharmaceutical supplies, but instead, last-minute substitutions raise the risk of a torturous death. The second method is simply described as nitrogen hypoxia. The recent death of Kenneth Smith is a case in point of what such an execution would entail. Based on my medical knowledge of the human body and my understanding of the chemistry of nitrogen gas, I predicted in my reports and testimony that the death in this way would be slow and tortuous. I predicted that Mr. Smith would suffer a seizure, which he did. I was concerned that he might vomit and choke on or aspirate gastric fluids. During his execution, observers reported witnessing Mr. Smith dry heaving, a common sign of vomiting. I was concerned Mr. Smith would experience terror and pain as his body detected the low oxygen in his blood. Through his clear mask, the signs of terror on his face were easy to see. He bucked and strained as he slowly suffocated. In addition to the experience of suffocation and sequelae of ischemic brain damage, hypoxia and anoxia results in ischemic damage to other regions of the body. This can be incredibly painful and include myocardial ischemia, the pain of cardiac arrest, and mesenteric ischemia, which can cause agonizing abdominal pain as various organs, which are fed by the large mesenteric artery, die through oxygen deprivation. Again, the eyewitness accounts of Mr. Smith's execution are consistent with this. The state of Alabama predicted based on nothing that the prisoner would be unconscious in seconds and dead in minutes. Multiple witness accounts confirm my predictions. The third method is electrocution. The amount of voltage needed to cause death may be in the range of 100 to 250 volts when using alternating currents. The bill does not specify exactly how electrocution would be utilized, what safeguards would be in place to avoid the possibility of intense heat causing the eyeballs to melt.
Valshemi.
May I finish the sentence?
Yes, you may finish the sentence.
How electrocution would, what safeguards would be in place to avoid the possibility of intense heat causing the eyeballs to melt, the body to catch fire, arcing electrical current, or simply a failure to cause death.
Thank you, Ms. Valshemi. Does any member have questions of Ms. Valshemi? Thank you. Last 2 witnesses, Sarah Ottiger and Ms. Ray.
Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee, my name is Mary Patricia Ray. I'm here to speak today on behalf of the Promise of Justice. I commend the survivors of unspeakable tragedy who have shared their stories with us today. It's important for us to listen to those. With great respect for Representative Muscarello, who I've worked with for years, I'm here to oppose this bill. It's been my honor to fight for strategies that prevent and respond to crime in Louisiana for almost 10 years. I was part of the team that helped pass 7 bills to make us no longer want number 1 in incarceration in 2017. And in fact, you're looking at the young lady who wrote the script for Governor John Bel Edwards' website in 2014 when we posted it saying that it was our number 1 goal to become no longer number 1 in incarceration in Louisiana.
I'm also a member of Governor Jeff Landry's transition team and proud of my service to Louisiana in every way. Earlier, I heard a member reference that you all took an oath upon entering office. Your oath that you pledged reads, "I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of this state, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon me according to the best of my ability and understanding. So help me God." Impartiality, in the context of the judicial branch, has been interpreted by the courts to be tied to the independence of the judicial branch. Nothing in your oath of office required you to vote to change the existing law, ever. Nothing in your oath of office required you to vote for a bill that allows for felony penalties for people who tell the truth about executions. Nothing in your oath requires you or even allows you to be impartial by making state employees from another branch of government carry out state-sanctioned murder. It says you're going to discharge your duties. And notably, nothing in your duty requires you personally to carry out an execution yourself now and will not if you vote for this bill. This bill doesn't make you the person doing the act of suffocation or electrocution. The bill, if you support it, says you are mandating someone else to do that. For more than 10 years, I've done advocacy in this building. Some of you have known me since I was fresh out of law school. I was very optimistic then. You knew me when I became a mom for the first time and the second time. We've been out to dinner. Some of the members I know who are watching this right now have been to my home, have helped me babysit my children. They're my friends and family, and they're members who are probably going to vote for this bill. We've worked together on so many issues: capital outlay, coastal restoration, education, local government, taxation, healthcare, agriculture. In this case, voting for a bill that expands methods of execution, and with your vote in the yay column, orders a state employee to carry out the suffocation or electrocution of another person, has no winners and only losers.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Does any member have questions of Ms. Ray? Ms. Ottinger.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Following up a little bit on what Mr. Clements said, in 1990, this legislature, the Louisiana legislature, passed a bill putting an end to electrocution as a mean of execution prospectively for everyone who got a death sentence after 1990. It did so, and some of the comments on the floor were that electrocution had come to be considered a horrible, horrible thing. The bill was described as not so much for the criminal as it is for society itself. And I say as well that I do not mean, by any means, to diminish the pain and suffering of so many people who have been victims of violent, horrible crime. That's not what I'm doing here. Ultimately, the measure passed in the House by an overwhelming majority of 87-3 in 1990. At that point, people who had been sentenced to death before 1990 would still be executed by electrocution. And I became one of a team who started to investigate what had been going on in this state with electrocution at the time. The details that came out, and I will say at that time, nobody really thought that anything had been a problem. They really didn't. But the details that came out in the course of that investigation were horrifying. One mother took photographs of her son who had horrible burning to the bone in his head and his leg. And it was his mom who saw that and took those photographs. Another sister of a man who had been executed, who was a nurse, did not take pictures. However, she submitted an affidavit describing the condition of the body of her brother. And she said it was fourth-degree burns with skin sliding from his body. It was awful. We were told for all of those electrocutions that there hadn't been a problem, that there was nothing wrong with the Louisiana electric chair. I want to just address briefly that when we got into court and had a hearing on Louisiana's electric chair, we were able to learn a lot more about the horrific things that were occurring. And we were able to do that because we were in court and we were able to conduct discovery and we were able to get information that we had not previously been able to put our hands on. And I would note, although it's in a different, this will be in a different committee, that this legislation prohibits courts from getting to the bottom of what happened.
Thank you, Ms. Ottinger. Does any member have questions of Ms. Ottinger? Thank you. I want to say to everyone, I know this is a tough debate, no matter what side you are on, and I want to truly thank the members and everyone today for at least respectfully agreeing to disagree on this issue. With that said, that wraps up the testimony on House Bill 6. I'm going to go ahead and read the cards in. We have in support, but not wishing to speak, Renee Perry. In support and not wishing to speak, Catherine Vincent. In support and not wishing to speak, Ms. Carol Gazzardo. In support and not wishing to speak, Kurt Wall from the Livingston District Attorney's Office. In support but not wishing to speak, is it Hope Novak? In support but not wishing to speak, Attorney General Liz Murrell. In support but not wishing to speak, Michael Renatza, Executive Director of the Sheriff's Association. And in support but not wishing to speak, Lance Maxwell with Governor Landry's office. And we also have 74 red cards in opposition that we will make a part of the record. Chairman Muscarelli, you want to close on your bill?
I want to thank y'all for your time. The debate was healthy. I'll leave you with this. No further questions. No, move favorable.
Representative Fontenot.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. You know, we sit up here and a lot of us just don't say anything. I could see in your face, you're looking at us. What are we thinking? What's going on? What's next? So this committee now is made up of a multitude of law enforcement professionals. So it's only natural for us to draw back to those experiences that we had in our careers. So Ms. Blanchard talked about how the person on death row may suffocate. I worked a fire where 4 people were murdered, and I sat in there with a 9-year-old child in the fire, and I often wondered, how much did she suffocate? I also wondered, how long after the fire did that person suffocate? There was a talk about 4th-degree burns. I remember after Dorothy Landry was murdered, she was post-mortem sexually assaulted, then doused her body with fuel and set her afire. I could go on and on and on, but one thing we do know is that all of those people are not here today. And as my career progressed, I ensured to them that I would uphold justice. Sometimes that meant finding the perpetrator. In this instance, I still hold my oath of office to uphold that justice to those people. So for those reasons, Madam Chairman, at the appropriate time, I would move favorable.
Move favorably as amended.
As amended.
Thank you. Representative Fontenot has moved favorably as amended. Do we have any objection? The bill is reported as amended.